Hey, welcome to another episode of Your Faith and Health Community. I'm your host, Pastor Jackie Jackson. And as always, on behalf of myself and our producer, Anita Alexander, we want to welcome you to our show. Now, before I get started, I got to ask, because we are in November, and you know what November means. That means it's open enrollment right now. Right now, you can enroll in health care. That's Medicaid, which is open year-round, but also Medicare, you can enroll in marketplace insurance. Now, if your income is $16,223 or less and you're single, that means that you're eligible for Medicaid. Not Medicare, but Medicaid, which has open enrollment. So November is no different than June. But if you need to enroll in the marketplace, meaning if you're single, you make more than $16,223. Let's say $16,224. That makes you ineligible for Medicaid, but you go to the marketplace. Some people call it Obamacare. That's when you go and you pick your insurance. Just a few things to think about that's really important. Know what medication, get your medication out, know what medications you're taking, what doctors you see, even down to what hospital that you want to go to. The reason being that not every insurance policy covers every medication. As wild as that is, there are some medications that Humana may cover that Aetna doesn't. So you want to make sure you have all that information. You want to sit down, you want to go through that and make sure you're on point. All right, so this is in swing now. So I'm going to be done with this conversation for right now. Just make sure you get insured. Health insurance. It's great to have life insurance, but that's only if you die. We're talking about health insurance to try to hopefully, prayerfully keep you from transitioning. Because you did not get some health issue taken care of. So get enrolled. If not for you, do it for your family. Now we have an awesome guest, Mr. Nashid Shakir, who is the program manager for JRAB, which is the Jurisdiction-Wide Residential Advisory Board. I want to thank you for being here today.
Well, thank you, Pastor Jackie, for inviting me here today.
Oh, it's awesome to have you here. I know we met, we've met a few times, but I had the opportunity to sit in a meeting with you, and it's probably been 4 or 5 months ago, maybe it seems it's that long ago, and heard about this program, which is through Metropolitan Housing, or not through, but connected with.
Well, actually, it's through the residents of Metropolitan Housing. They actually wrote their own grant. They had their own 501c3, and they were funded through their organization, the Jurisdiction-Wide Resident Advisory Board, but they're natural partners with the Cincinnati Metropolitan Housing Authority, since their funding come from HUD, and the residents actually live in the Housing Authority's properties. So in what the so-called founding fathers did when HUD was developed, they really understood that power corrupts and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. Right. Well, what they did was they put in conditions that the residents would be able to advocate and have some laws that protect them, as opposed to having the laws strictly come through, or everything that regulates them strictly come through the Housing Authority.
Now, we're not talking through the Constitution.
No,
when you said the found, okay.
Yeah, the founding fathers of HUD.
Okay, there we go. I was like going,
Not the
really? I don't remember that part.
But
okay.
There are laws, there are regulations and codes that's set up for the government of the United States, and they put in the tenant participation codes is 24 CFR, that's the Code of Federal Regulations, 964, and that's for tenant participation regulated by law. So the Housing Authority and residents are actually governed by that. And then there's various parts of that 964 and various parts of the 24 CFR that actually allows residents to have certain opportunities that no one can take away from them. Now, the Housing Authority, a lot of times when
I want to stop you real quick, because you threw out a lot of alphabet soup. Correct. And so me being a novice, I know that's jargon for you, but for me and probably some of our viewers, I have no idea what all those alphabets were.
Okay, when we say 24 CFR, there's a series of regulations that actually govern the housing authorities across the country. you know, and the 24 CFR part governs the housing and urban development for, that includes Indian housing and residents that live in low-income public housing projects, right? You know, and in that 24, there's a series of categories through that 24, such as 964, 24 CFR. When you say CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. These are regulations that are laws that governs how housing authorities work. Now, 964 is a particular part that says, okay, well, these are tenants that live in your housing authority, you know, and they have certain laws that you can't go against under the codes and regulations of the United States of America. The bad part of that is that a lot of residents don't actually know what those codes are, although they give them rights to even be in any kind of discussion, any type of governance that's going to happen to them within and under the housing authority's authority. Well, that's a part in it that the residents should actually be partners in all of the planning that's done inside of public housing under that code and the regulations. There's also things in that actually deal with their opportunities to have first opportunity at work with any development that goes on inside of their geographical area. Has nothing to do with ethnicity, has nothing to do with race, but it does have to do with where you live at. If there's going to be development in, say, Winton Terrace, and for those who are familiar with it, but a particular geographical area, then every dollar that's spent through HUD in order to bring that urban development about, 30% of that dollar should go towards training, education, employment, subcontracting, contracting with the residents that live in that area as the first priority.
So well, I have a couple of things here. One, where would someone go, especially a resident, where would they go to get this information? Because I'm assuming it's not a part of the move-in packet.
For those that actually have access to the internet, then there's a website that's called electronic ECFR, Electronic Code of Federal Regulations. You know, and then you would go to .gov, and you go there, and then what you would do is put in the search 24 CFR, and it'll take you to that particular category, 24 CFR, and then in that, there's a lot of other subcategories that actually govern residents' relationship with their housing authorities.
24 CFR. 24 CFR. Okay, .gov.
Right.
All right, so that's my first question. So tenants have in metropolitan housing, and I'm not under HUD. That's not just Cincinnati, but anywhere across the United States. So there are actually more rights and more things that they should receive. That unfortunately, because I'm assuming that these jurisdiction boards are not set up in every housing area.
But if you have over there's resident associations, resident councils that are, if there's 2, 3, 4, 5 units of housing that they should have under HUD, public housing, then they should have a resident council to actually support them, that actually advocate for them, that actually make sure that their rights are being met. You know,
and the council, and so the resident councils should know this information, right? That
it's pertinent.
Okay.
I mean, it's pertinent that they know this information and then use it. I mean, it's one thing to know it
and
just sit on it. It's another thing to use it. And a lot of times what happens is resident council may know the information but be afraid to use it because they think that they're going to be punished with their housing by maybe being evicted or some things that's coming up.
Well, since you mentioned that, is that something that's a possibility? Because we know sometimes there are a lot of laws or things for us or for someone, you know, not just in public housing, but just period. That sometimes, if you're leasing an apartment, renting an apartment through a landlord that has nothing to do with public housing, no Section 8, there are still some things that you may see out of place, and once you start addressing them, then they make a move to maybe try to get rid of you. So when residents go to put this in motion, is it something that you found that there can be some retaliation from HUD or from the housing authority?
Well, actually, if you really don't understand your rights, you know, I mean, Ohio is a tenant landlord. It actually tenant landlord state. That means that the tenants have rights above the landlords in the state, and Ohio pushes that. You know, but if you're afraid of the landlord to actually use your rights and take them where you need to do to make sure that those rights are honored, then you can be bullied. And that's really what it is. Inside of the housing authority, if you understand your 24 CFR, it also gives spots where you can push against, you know, retaliation. It states that. And then legal aid, and then there's other organizations that's out there supports the tenants' rights to actually have rights, you know. So as long as the tenants can actually understand that these are the things that support me, and then they work collectively. What we've been doing with the Jurisdiction-Wide Resident Advisory Board for the past 10 years is helping all of those resident councils that have been elected by the people that represent 10,800 folks to start working together, you know, to actually understand that there's power in numbers. You know, and if you're an elected resident council and you're working individually, or you're one person that's trying to make something happen, then that's different. If you're a group of folks that live in a high-rise apartment that got 399 units and things are not going right, and then you decide to do a rent strike, you know, you decide to put your money in escrow, you know, and the
power of the dollar
for those things to change, and the power of the folks. One person can actually cause a ripple. But you get 200 of those folks that's doing it.
That's a tsunami.
Right.
Right.
You can make somebody come down and talk to you about how do we change that. And then also when you get to the point that you understand that your rights go not only in Ohio, but when you're dealing with HUD, it goes all the way up to HUD that you can file a grievance. And then the housing authorities have to address that grievance in some form, some way. And a lot of times housing authorities don't want to do that because they get points or they get extra money for the partnerships that they develop with their tenants.
Well, let me ask you this. Just based on a name I will not mention, but is this program being as successful as it was, say, before 3 years ago? And are you seeing that it's better, that it's the same, or is it losing some of its fire?
Well, it's actually better than 3 years ago. I mean, it seems like those in authority that can actually make changes have come to the understanding, realization of, I said at one point, it seems like you've had your come to Jesus moment because you're changing the way that you're responding to the residents. But one of the things that I personally feel is that the heads of this organization have decided that it's more profitable to work with residents that are not going away. They're learning their rights. They're pushing forward. They're reaching outside of the housing authority, going to legal aid, going to the health department, going to the city, bringing their complaints collectively together. That started to make ripples that, you know, that housing authority really didn't want, you know, but didn't know what it didn't want, because a lot of times what happens is in institutions, folks are trained on, first of all, they get away from the regulations, they get away from the codes, they get away from understanding what the rights of the residents are, and they start imposing their rights or what they feel they have the power to do, and then they pass that imposition of power down to the folks that they hire, who now don't even know that there's codes or regulations. A lot of times we be educating, you know, the managers of the different units on what the rights of the residents are according to their own codes and federal regulations that they should be abiding by, you know, because they don't know, because it's been hearsay down from one manager to another manager to another manager, where when it comes to the codes over here, They're way over here.
Which is why it's important as a tenant to get your own information. You know, there's a scripture in the Bible that says, "My people perish for lack of knowledge." And so a lot of times, not just from a spiritual base, a lot of times we lose out or we have misfortune mainly because we didn't get the knowledge. There's also another scripture that says, "Study to show yourself approved unto God. Correct. A workman need not be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth." So if you're not taking time out to go to, I'm gonna pull it back up because I don't know it, he does, to 24cfr.gov to learn what your rights are. Because knowledge is power. Right. And once you know your rights, when someone comes at you with something that's not there, you don't have to start talking like you don't know. You don't have to get upset. You can just go, well, according to the law, according to these regulations, and print it out and have it and go, here, well, this is what this says. So I just wanted to throw that in because I think it's important that people get this information. I want to read this and...
Let me say, I'm glad that you threw that in because the whole idea about knowing the information, understanding it, and be willing to quote it back up and spit it out and give it to them, that's a big step forward. Because a lot of times, they just don't remember, or they just don't know. If it not been given to them, or they haven't had any reason to go back and look at it, and then this gives them a reason. A lot of times they're not trying to buck the system. They're just doing what they've been trained to do when they come in. When they understand that you have rights, these are your rights. And a lot of times they back up, and they start treating you in a different way because you've come into them in a different way. It's not what I feel. I'm not angry. I'm not upset.
This isn't emotional. This is legal. And that becomes that's a whole different conversation. And in some cases, you may have people who go, I don't want to buck the system because then they'll start looking at me. But here's the thing. If you know that, as they say, your household is in order, correct, you can't allow yourself and your family to suffer when there are things that are in place to protect you because your neighbor says, I'm not going to be in compliance with what I need to take care of, right, and whatever that may be. So like you said, having that information, and here's what's wonderful. We have it used to be you had to sit down at this big bulky desktop computer, right? And then it streamlined a little. You got laptops, you got iPads, and now you can pull up stuff on your phone. So here's the thing, getting the information by going to, let me go back down again so I quote it right, 24cfr.gov, you can do that on your cell phone. You can get it, save it to your phone, save it in your notes, and the thing is, it's always right at your fingertips if you run into a situation. I want to ask, I wanted to read the mission. I wanted to read a part of the mission statement that says, our mission is to increase the attainable employment and contracting opportunities generated by two board categories of the U.S. Department of HUD. What are these? You're talking about employment and contracting opportunities. Mm-hmm. What are these?
Comes back. A lot of people may have heard the saying that Section 3, is
that like a Section 8?
No, well, actually it's not. Section 3 is actually Board of 964.135 that deals with employment and employment and contracting and subcontracting with residents, in a geographical area that work is being paid for, being partially at $1 of HUD money in urban development in any area,
This is new. This is something that's new?
1964. That's when it was actually put in place. But it was kept down for all the way up until President Obama decided that they were not going to let him bring in any new programs for whatever reason they had. So he said, well, we can put some teeth in the old programs. And that's when Section 3 was actually given some supports inside of, and by supports, it means some penalties if actually the contractors that usually got the awards, the major contractors that got the awards didn't actually start utilizing the requirements of Section 3 in order to not only change the physical environment that the people live in, but also give an opportunity for that human capital environment to actually raise up when the community raised up, so they don't have to leave. They're making the same. They're making the dollars to be able to stay there because they're utilizing what HUD put in place in Section 3, which says that if you live in a particular community, no matter what your race, your color, whatever, and there's $1 of development that's been done in that urban development that's been done in that community, then the residents of public housing have the first right, the first opportunity to actually get employed, get contracted with, get subcontracted with, or get training in order to help build that community.
So there's opportunity, and now I'm rushing you, and I'm sorry, but
Sure,
we're down to a few minutes. But so there's opportunity in the community, in the public housing, but also it's a thing of having yourself prepared, right?
You have to have yourself prepared.
Resumes, if you're trying to go for the job, trainings that you need to be prepared to do the work. So I'm assuming like if there's construction and you are able to do construction or you have experience, that you should be able to get hired, which means that it might be smart to go and do the OSHA thing and have all that ready and have your card, because when opportunity presents itself, if you're not in position, then it can pass. But probably the part that really hits me the most is the fact that until we met with you a few months ago, I didn't even know this existed. And I've learned more today than I've probably known over my life where this is concerned. And so that's real important. If the tenant boards or the tenant councils, if they're not created, or they should be, then they're not alone, because JRAB will be there to help, right? So you give that guidance and advice. So it's not like you're jumping out there on something that is new and you have no experience. They have you to turn to that has the experience, knows how to make it move. So let me ask this: how successful have you seen the program be? And just a real quick answer.
Well,
I'm sorry, in terms of getting employed.
Sure. Oh, well, the program is actually real successful as far as getting residents up and in the position to be employed. Lately, the Housing Authority has actually upped this game, where it's making, it's actually hiring residents rather than going outside to hire other people to actually do the work. And part of that is also training. You know, the training that they'll hire residents that may not have all the skills and then begin to train them on the skills that they need from the inside, as opposed to going outside hiring so-called qualified, ready workers that have nothing to do with the geography itself. You know, and that's part of what HUD says have to happen. And that really, a lot of that came when money started being taken out of HUD dollars and out of housing authorities, put in somewhere else with the new administration that came in that really, you know, have issues about money trickling up as opposed to trickling down. So
listen, there's a lot of information. You should have got a lot of information today. I hope you took a pen and have written it down. We really want to thank Nashid Shakir, who, I said that right?
Said it right.
Thank you. Who is the program manager for JRAB, the JRAB, Jurisdiction-Wide Resident Advisory Board. Remember also the 24cfr.gov. There'll be information at the end of the show that you can get more and on how to contact Mr. Shakir and get some information. Information is important. Trust me, this man has a wealth of knowledge. I've been educated. I hope you have. We want to thank you for tuning in to your faith and health community. And remember, try your best.
Well, let me put this in perspective, Jackie. It's ECFR, electronic.
Oh, not C.
.gov. And when you get in, you put in search for 24CFR. And then it'll take you where you need to be.
Okay, but all that information you'll have, we'll make sure that we get that up on the screen so that you can take advantage of it. Listen, try your best to stay faithful and stay healthy.